My name is GM Jesse Kraai, and today I'm going to talk about why the book Alekhine's Best Games is one of the greatest books ever written and why you should read it. Now, there's a lot of players in chess history, and for the historian, they're all interesting. For example, Steinitz, an amazing contribution to the game. But if you're a player, I don't know how much you're going to get out of studying Steinitz's games. For one, a lot of his opponents are chumps, and it's kind of gross, some of the moves that they do, okay? But if you're a historian, of course, it's very interesting, definitely a contribution to the game. However, what I would say is there are 4 players who dramatically changed the game, in my estimation, just by their skill. And those 4 players, everyone should study. They are Capablanca, Alekhine, Fischer, and Kasparov. Of course, there are others too. Of course there are. But in terms of understanding something about the game, like you could study their games and come away with like a whole new perspective on what's going on, those are the top 4 that just come to my mind. And one of the great things about this book is it's a full 220 games. So if you contrast that, say, with Fischer, you got 60 memorable games, right? And that's also not at his peak. That's before his peak. Also, what we want to add to this is the book New York 1924, which Alekhine annotated, also a classic, right? And there he's talking about other people's games. But what's so interesting about this book is he's really going to showcase the art that he brought to the game. And let's state the obvious. What are you going to learn from this, whether you're interested in it historically or as a player? You are going to learn how to attack. The imagination in attack, and in particular, how to build an attack. Because that's where it gets really interesting in my view. How do you build an attack? It's a very difficult thing to do, and Alekhine really shows it at its best in these games. Okay, so this is part of the ChessDojo training program, though I think anybody could read this book. I spent 72 hours on here. Here's my heat map, and you can see all of those vertical columns on the right, which are bluish, are my work in the last several weeks doing this book. It was very enjoyable. Okay, let's get into it. I have to fix this screen, and we're going to go here. I just want to give a couple examples of what I mean by the genius of his play and what you can learn from it. So in this position, Black's doing fine, but I think a lot of chump players would play Queen H4 here or Knight F6, and Alekhine plays this great move here. Bam! H5. Beautiful move. And what it says is, White, listen, buddy, you are going to have to play F4 anyway. So, first of all, he does, and then it's like, oh, that pawn on H5, it's doing pretty good. G5, G3, Knight F6, oh, buddy, here we come. Boom, boom, bam. And he's totally ripped open. I'll play through the rest of the game quickly, but it's lost at this point. Just complete curtains. Curtains, as they say. Let me show you my favorite example. Here he's playing Bogiubov. He played 2 matches against Bogiubov. Probably should have been playing Kappa in those years, but that's a whole different historical story. And I love the way this game goes from here. So I think a lot of chump players here, including myself, would probably take the pawn on C4 or something dumb like that. Alekhine's not even thinking about it. All right, so let's look what he does. So bishop G5. Now, it's a natural enough move, but at a certain level, you could say to yourself, well, okay, the knight's going to move, and then I'm going to get kicked with a move like H6. No good. But one of the beautiful things about this move is, one, if you play H6, I'm probably going to take it. 2, what I really want us to see is he's, by controlling D8, and we're going to see it's important in a lot of variations, with the help of this rook, he's doing something that Kasparov's later going to do, that Kasparov calls splitting the board in 2. So imagine we have these pieces on the queen side. This rook is going to keep them on that side while we mate black. And I got to admit, it just for me, chump GM, looking at this, I wouldn't think I had the right yet to mate black. Okay, so if knight d7, the idea is knight e4, and we'll definitely come here with a very nice attack. So Bogeybuff plays knight d5, boom, boom. Now almost every chump here would play bishop d5. Alekhine plays rook d5. Genius level move. Genius level move. And it's all worked out. And I want to stress, this is one of the cool ideas that later we can get with Kasparov too, is we're splitting the board. And what's the point after knight b4? Bam! Oh no! Oh no, buddy. g6, bishop f6, winning. h6, bishop takes f, h6, winning. Right? And the beauty of it is f5, bam, baby. Oh. And then it's absolutely toast. Beautiful. And so you really get about 220 examples of this, how to build the position, how to attack in this book. Now I want to show a couple, actually I want to show one position that I think typifies how I see Alekhine playing, just stylistically. And there are many moves that white can play here, but the enterprising moves, I want to use that word, queen c2 and a3. Enterprising back in the day, what we meant was when you do a move that has an exclam question mark, that annotation doesn't make, for a computer generation, they're like, what are you talking about? It's either a good move or a bad move. What they mean back in the day with enterprising move is a move maybe where you are going to give something for something in return, some kind of positional ambition. So with queen c2, you're going to give up a lot of time. With a3, you're also giving up time in your pawn structure. Alekhine plays both. I want to just bring that up because there are many games in this book where he's playing moves like that, especially moves in the early phase of the game where he's going to not develop for some positional aim. Oftentimes very controversial, but hard to play against. Okay, let me show a couple examples now. I want to show of, let's call it the negative side of Alekhine, if you will. Let me show you an example to show what I mean. Here he's playing Marshall, and I feel like Marshall is very similar to Alekhine. And what do I mean by that? I mean that Alekhine and Marshall have very little respect for what modern players and also players of his day might think of as static aspects of the position. So, for example, Nimzovich, same period, plays against Alekhine many times. There he has a sense of like where the pieces go, and this is where they belong. Alekhine's not playing that game. It's one of the reasons he's very revolutionary in that he is thinking really in terms of variations, calculation, depth, and a lot of times he just doesn't even think about what we would call static formations. So for example, to me, it's obvious that c6 is the move here. Marshall, who is, like I said, a very kindred spirit of Alekhine, plays b6. And I'm like, what are you doing, buddy? What are you doing? So I wanted to bring this up. Alekhine doesn't talk about it at all in the annotations. I thought that was really interesting. But I also wanted to bring it up because Marshall, like I said, is Alekhine's cousin in this regard. Okay, let me show you another example. This one's fascinating. So this is early on in Alekhine's career. I think in Alekhine's career, what we can say, what I seem to have gathered anyways from the book, is I really do feel he matures throughout the years. And he becomes much more positionally attuned and less, let's call it, venturesome. In this position, this is to me an example of just how really kind of insane the guy was. I think every chump GM here would say, all right, I'm going to move the knight back. I'm going to stabilize this thing, and I have great chances to win. And really, you know, especially in a game, you probably wouldn't even be thinking about deep variations. You'd just be like, well, that's where I got to go. Okay, Alekhine, not that way, dude. Not that way. King f3. You're out of your mind. And what is it's like really mind bending when we think about this. He doesn't want to move the knight back because he doesn't want the rook to have this ability. And now he's doing this funky thing, and it's like, okay, a5, king e2. And you say to yourself, well, wait a second, what did he achieve here? He achieved now that this rook can't move away without the pawn going. So it's like, oh, I intentionally did that. I intentionally set up this king e4, c6 thing. And then here, and then he says he missed this, and now the milk's gone bad. He ends up winning this game, but, you know, things have totally gone astray. So an example of how, you know, it doesn't always go your way when you play creatively. Honestly, one of the problems for players who are reading a book like this is like, well, when I do it, when I do it, buddy, it doesn't work, man. It doesn't work. So it's just something to think about because we've all been burned before when we tried to do something fancy. All right, another example. This is also a little bit early in his career. And to me, it's just obvious that this bishop, dude, it's going back. It's going back. It needs to get fixed pronto. And Alekhine here forces the issue with e5 before he's fixed the bishop. And I was screaming. I was like, what are you doing, Baus? You're killing me, Baus. And I don't even know. He doesn't even talk about why DE doesn't work. To me, black seems totally fine after that. Here, black, I think, definitely crushed. That the dude's he's all squirmed up. He ain't gonna be making it. So I wanted to show these, let's call them negative examples, just because they show the other side of it. You know, like there's so many beautiful games in here, but there's also like what you could call a negative side, which is interesting because it helps us understand the man and his mind and what was different about Alekhine, because he was different. He was different than everyone who came before him. And really, for generations, there really wasn't a player like him. You know, you can talk about Tal later, right? The other thing I want to say about it that's interesting, for me anyways, as a historian, is one of the things Kappa complains about is he's like, oh, the openings, they're all worked out. They're all worked out. You know, we're not going to be able to play chess anymore because the openings have all been figured out. And one of the things this book helped me understand is why he felt that way, because the top players were all doing like d4, d5. And e4, e5, and they were just sitting and holding, boom, boom, boom. And it wasn't really later, primarily with the influence of guys like Nimzovich and Reddy, where you start seeing games with what we call hyper-modern play, something like this, right? And this is in fact one of the examples where he plays queen c2. So this comes later, and it opens up this huge area of opening play and ideas, something I think that's more to his style that he didn't get to play too much of when he was a kid. But that said, you know, you play d4, d5, you can still light that board up. I mean, it's not like it's over. Okay, so there it is, part of the ChessDojo training program. I think one of the greatest books out there, not only for historical reasons, but also for your own chess improvement. And like I say with a lot of these books, the books that are pre-computer are especially good for your own chess training because you can measure yourself against the greats. And you can check it with the computer later if you want. You can like have a debate with the book, you know, and if you can't figure it out, you can ask the beast later. And so you have this really interesting discussion going on, whereas the computer checkbooks, they're fun and everything, but they're not, they take away the original thought that was in the player's head when they were playing it. Because once the player sees the engine, you can't go back. All right, there it is. Alekhine's best games. By the way, I read that in the old notation. I think I'm the last person alive to be able to do it. Thank you very much. I got this from the basement of the St. Louis Chess Club years ago. I've been toting it around. So finally, glad to have the chance to read it.